I'm Natalie Graves Tucker, and welcome to Real Answers Right Now from AARP. Today's conversation will focus on where you live, your home, your community, and what you can do to stay in your home and community safely, affordably, and comfortably as you age. Joining us today are Richard Duncan, the Executive Director of the R.L. Mace Universal Design Institute, and Mike Watson, the Director of Livable Communities here at AARP, as we discuss the intersection of housing affordability, universal design, local innovation, and the economic realities of staying put. And as usual, we want to hear from you, so we will answer your questions live. Before we begin, if you would like to hear this telephone town hall in Spanish, press *0 now on your telephone keypad.
Si usted desea escuchar en español, presione asterisco y cero en su teléfono ahora.
AARP is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that provides resources to help older adults and caregivers. This program is for educational purposes only. Please consult qualified professionals for personalized. If you're just joining us, I'm Natalie Graves Tucker with AARP, and I want to welcome you to our program, Real Answers Right Now from AARP. Today, we're discussing where you live, your home, your community, and what you can do to stay in your home and community safely, affordably, and comfortably as you age. During today's town hall, if you would like to ask a question, press *3 on your telephone keypad or post it in the comments if you're joining via Facebook or YouTube. Now let's meet our guest today, Richard Duncan. Richard is the Executive Director of the Universal Design Institute and Better Living Design Institute with nearly 40 years experience in accessible and universal design for homes and communities. He is a leading authority on universally designed homes serving people with disabilities and older adults. Mike Watson. Mike is AARP's Director of Livable Communities, leading initiatives that help cities, towns, and rural areas become great places for all ages. He oversees AARP Community Challenge Grants, technical assistance programs, and the AARP network of age-friendly states and communities. Richard and Mike, welcome to our town hall.
Hello.
Thanks. Such a delight to be here.
Let's go ahead and get started. Richard, we frequently hear the phrase aging in place. And as we begin our conversation today, I want to ask you to provide some clarity on what is meant when someone references aging in place. Could you define this concept for us and explain why the ability to age in place is such an important goal for older adults?
Sure, Natalie. Thanks for that. First, let's acknowledge that we're all aging in place. But some of us are aging maybe more successfully than others. And as a goal, we know that there are many factors that play into our ability to age successfully. I think today's event is about looking at built environment issues, home features, home design, neighborhood and community characteristics. So that'll be our focus in that. But in terms of what aging in place is or what it means for me, there's a couple of examples I'll show you here, and then we'll mention something else, I think, maybe later on in the program. But one way to look at it is enhancing older adults' ability to stay engaged with family and community life. For a lot of us, that's really the backbone of the events that we have in our life and the pleasure that we get out of life. Being able to maintain that for as long as possible is real important. And of course, as you'll find out, the issues we'll talk about will really help contribute to that. Another way to think about it is our ability to maintain our activities of meaning and purpose, whatever those might be. Maybe it's hobbies that we do around the house. Maybe it's events we go to in the community. Maybe it's being able to socialize with friends and family. Being able to maintain those, again, for as long as possible really helps us lead a more successful aging process, I think. And the contrast is really for people who maybe do less about thinking about maintaining ourselves for successful aging. It has to do with living, what is our tendency to live smaller and more dangerous lives going forward, often years prematurely, because perhaps, for example, our homes don't work well for us than we would otherwise be able to. So that's a starting kind of looking at what aging in place is and what it really means.
Thank you for that, Richard. Mike, turning to you. The phrase housing diversity might be one that is new to our audience. Can you explain this concept and share why it matters in building communities that are livable and are able to support aging in place?
Yeah, thanks, Natalie. So, housing, I think Richard just did a great job of explaining the concept of aging in place and why that's important. And a key aspect of that is housing diversity. And you might think a number of things when you hear that, but what that really means is just offering a mix and a diversity of housing types, from single family homes, kind of the homes that you see in your standard neighborhood, to duplexes, to townhomes, to apartments, to accessory dwelling units or ADUs, or kind of the mother-in-law suites, all of those things that people know them as, and offering all of those within the same community. And this matters for a few reasons. I think, first of all, as Richard noted, people kind of want to remain in their communities as they age. AARP has talked to our members and volunteers over the decades to ask them what's most important in your community and what are the factors that keep you in your community. And almost every single person, if we were doing a poll today, we would hear almost every single person say, I want to remain in my community as I age, because it's the place where we have our connections. We have our friends, our places of worship, our doctors, the places where we've gone, and people want to remain there. And what makes that happen and what allows that is having a range of housing options. We might not be able to remain in the home that we raised our children in as we age. It might just not be built for us, and maybe there's some improvements we can make, but having a diversity and an array of different housing options that are available allows people to remain in their familiar neighborhoods and in their communities as their needs change, which avoids isolation and costly moves. And we also know that different types of housing also supports people of different income levels, family sizes, lifestyles. This creates kind of vibrant, interactive, intergenerational neighborhoods. And finally, we know that different types of housing also attracts a range of residents. So this supports local business. Housing that is, communities that have more diverse housing are also more walkable, which helps people become more healthy and strengthen social connections. So there's a range of benefits from it. But again, this just comes back to having a range of housing options that people can choose to live in as they age.
Thank you for that, Mike. Now, why is expanding housing diversity important to a community's health and vitality? Can it truly help to further empower older residents, and by expanding options such as ADUs and small homes provide support for family caregivers? Let's start with Richard and then go to Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Natalie. So I'll take the community's perspective to start with. I mean, I think having older adults in numbers remain in our communities adds to what I would think of as community continuity. We want to have older adults be there in a kind of institutional sense. In an organizational sense, we think of it as having institutional memory. We don't want to lose it. We want to have older adults around who can provide this connection between and among generations going forward. As Mike mentioned, though, not all of us might be able to remain in the homes that we choose, the homes that we're living in currently. And there are a range of options for aging in place. And among them, of course, most people, as Mike said, prefer to live in their own home. For some of us, that's possible. For others of us, it isn't possible. So creating these housing opportunities, maybe nearby, maybe in the same neighborhood, maybe in the community at large, is a terrific idea. Some folks may find that their home is too large. Some folks may find that their home is difficult to maintain. We know that older adults live in some of the most older housing in our communities, so maintenance might be an issue. And then maybe looking for other smaller options that the missing middle housing options and accessory dwellings may provide in their communities. So we're emphasizing that in terms of creating new housing, but also acknowledging that there's a lot that can be done in maintaining people in their existing homes as well.
Thank you. Mike, anything to add on?
Yeah, I thought Richard answered that really well. I think the only things I would add is kind of this, the importance of choice here, right? I think in our society, we love having options. We love having choices, and that applies very much to the housing market in our community. And as Richard noted, there may be almost everybody wants to remain in their home, their current residence. It's where you live. It's moving can be challenging, all of the different reasons. But we also know that there are, as Richard noted, people who might not be able to. And what we need is we need choices and we need options. And having those choices allows people to downsize without leaving their community and living and having to leave living near family members. And then finally, I would underscore on the family caregivers. We know that communities that have options such as accessory dwelling units or small homes, what they do is they foster and allow multi-generational living. They allow people of multiple generations to all live together, maybe not under the same roof, but on the same property, under different roofs. And it also reduces, in some instances, when a family caregiver maybe is able to live near the person they're caring for, it can reduce caregiving stress and costs while helping people maintain their independence. We know that one of the most significant drivers of costs for family caregivers is the cost of housing. So if we're able to allow these multiple options and smaller living options to allow folks to kind of share costs as they're caring for a loved one, we know that that helps them in the long run.
I do have a public policy focused follow-up question. What common measurements can local leaders use to know if housing diversity is improving day-to-day life in their communities? Mike?
Well, this is a great question, and I think we could very quickly go down, and I'm sure Richard would love to do this as well, very quickly go down the using a lot of policy wonk terms that might not make sense to a lot of folks. But before we get into that, what I would underscore is there's a great tool at AARP called the AARP Livability Index. And you can find that by going to aarp.org/livability index. And this allows you to look at your community with a range of factors, including looking at different characteristics of your housing to understand where your community is strong, where it could use some improvement, and to help empower you to understand where the places you want to live and or what are the changes you want to make. So I would really direct folks to that to really understand some of these options. But what I would kind of highlight is some common measurements that folks can use is there's different types of things called, one, you can look at kind of the housing mix. There's an index called a housing mix index, which essentially looks at how many single family homes do you have in the community versus how many multifamily homes, because we know that that's going to allow people multiple options to live. The other, another thing that local leaders and community leaders can look at is affordability, right? What % of your household in your community are spending less than 30% of their income on housing? That's a pretty common measure across the country. And then finally, I would note accessibility, which goes back to a lot of the terms and a lot of the actions that Richard mentioned earlier when it comes to aging in place. But what are the number of homes who are meeting universal design or accessible design standards, meaning they're designed for anybody of any age or any ability to be able to live in and thrive in as their age. So those are some of the different measures. But again, I would really underscore and ask folks, if you have time, if you have access to a computer or a phone, go to the AARP Livability Index, and you can check out some of these measures and actions for yourself.
Thank you for that. Are there common policies and barriers that block housing choice? And what policy fixes can local leaders adopt to overcome those barriers?
Yes, I could just answer that question with yes. There are policies that restrict choice, and we see this across the country. And the good news here is we are seeing communities nationwide recognize this and take action to actually allow more housing options within their community. There's more that can and should be done, but this is a real positive movement we've seen over the last 10 to 20 years. So first of all, I'll highlight some of the barriers, right? We all live in a community, and every community has different types of zoning, right? Some uses are zoned commercial, some are zoned residential. But what we see is there are certain types of zoning that we kind of classify as restrictive, meaning it just doesn't allow people to be flexible and have maximum choice in where they choose to live and what they choose to build and how the type of home that they want to reside in. So these can be things like restricting lot sizes, having minimum lot sizes, having parking mandates that require a certain amount of parking per housing, and certain types of outdated building codes. Now, those are some of the barriers. And I mentioned earlier there was a really positive story, and there's a lot of community that's taking action. And that is true because there are some real policy fixes. And what we see is communities across the country, in many places in partnership with AARP staff and volunteers on the ground in communities working to make this happen, are working to legalize accessory dwelling units, or ADUs, which are essentially a small, adjacent, or connected proper structure on the property that allows somebody the option to have someone else live there as well. There's also been moves across the country to reduce minimum lot requirements that allow people to kind of build and build on these lots with a little bit more flexibility. There's been a big movement across the country to make it easier and to allow the permitting and building of duplexes and triplexes so that we can have more folks living in our communities and giving people more options to remain in their community or in their neighborhood as they age. And then finally, and this is an area where Richard has done so much work across the country, is to incentivize universal design or accessible design in new construction. And finally, some communities will also offer tax credits or kind of expedited permitting for certain types of housing as well. So there's some barriers for sure, but a lot of positive action that we're seeing across the country.
That all sounds wonderful. Now, if a family wants to create an ADU for a parent, where should they start? Like, what should their first steps be?
That is a great question. And again, this is an area where I would direct you to go check out a website that AARP has, which is www.aarp.org/ADU, just those three letters together. When you go there, you will find a load of resources that are kind of written in plain language, and also resources that can help you advocate in your community if that's something you want to do. But after you do that, then I would recommend you do the following few things. First, check your local zoning. And you can do this by calling your planning and zoning. You can kind of get on Google and just Google this very easily to confirm that ADUs are permitted and understand your size limits. Another way you can do this too is by going to that livability index I mentioned earlier. There's kind of drop downs there where you can actually see if the community has an ADU policy and what that looks like. The other thing is I would look, kind of budgeting and financing is key. So you need to think about your budgeting, your financing, and also explore if there are local tax incentives, what the loan makeup looks like. Some communities and states even offer ADU financing programs. That's a little limited, but there are options out there. And then finally, always consider your uses. And we would always encourage you, and I'm sure Richard would say the same thing, try to design for accessibility. So incorporate these home fit principles. Think about the variety of needs that folks are going to have and try to build as accessible and as universal designed as you possibly can. And then finally, permitting and construction, as you get down this path, it can be quite a thing to wade through. So always make sure you're working with licensed contractors who are familiar with your local ADU regulations. And in some communities as well, they will have pre-approved ADU plans that can just help save you some time and some money if they work for your lot size and unique kind of situation.
All right, I think we have one more question for you before we go to our callers. Can you provide an example of a community that is taking a creative approach to adopting housing diversity and providing support for the affordable housing options?
Yes, I'll highlight a few, and I'll note that a lot of these communities, so AARP has a network of communities across the country. There's over 1,000 that have joined a network called the AARP Network of Age-Friendly States and Communities. And these are communities, again, over 1,000 across the country that are working to take action to improve a range of factors so people can live there and age in place no matter their conditions. And a lot of these communities are taking action on housing and accessory dwelling units and working to have a diversity of housing options available. So these ones I'm going to list too are kind of within that network. So one of the communities that's always kind of on the leading edge of this is Portland, Oregon, where they've waived ADU fees and streamlined permitting to try to encourage development, along with a range of other actions they're taking. The state of Vermont also works to incentivize small homes and shared housing for older adults through state programs. Other states like Maine offers tax credits for various types of aging in place repairs. And Denver, Colorado also has been working to pilot zoning reforms to allow ADUs in single family neighborhoods. Now, these are kind of a range of states, but this is a movement that is kind of driven in large cities and urban areas, but also in rural areas, because same thing, we know folks want to remain in their neighborhoods as they age and as they care for loved ones.
All right. It is time to take your questions live with our experts, Richard Duncan and Mike Watson. Press *3 at any time to be connected with AARP staff. A quick reminder, this program is for educational insights, for personal guidance. Consult local permitting offices, licensed contractors, occupational therapists, or housing counselors. Now I'd like to bring in Julio Viena, who will help facilitate our calls. Welcome, Julio.
Thanks, Natalie. I'm happy to help facilitate your call.
All right, Julio, who is our first caller?
Our first caller comes from Vicky from New Hampshire.
Hi, Vicky, in New Hampshire. What is your question?
I'm making, and right now I've been working on this since noontime, and it's about 1:15 when I decided to call you. I hope things are going okay for you these days, and be blessed. Thank you so much. And thank you for getting together when we did.
All right, I think we are having a little trouble with that one. Let's go on to another one. Who do we have, Julio?
Yes, our next question comes from Paul from New York.
Hi, Paul. What is your question?
Hi there. Thanks for putting this together. Really appreciate the information. I guess my question is this. I live in Plainview, New York, Nassau County, one of the most expensive places on the planet. And when the gentlemen talk about, optional places to live and maybe less expensive, they're not the builders are not building. They're building to make money. They're not building to help the seniors out. So where do you go? I've lived here my whole life. And with the property taxes the way they are, it's going to be next to impossible for my wife and I when we retire, which we're close to stay in our home where our kids grew up. And I think that's the problem. They're building these beautiful townhouses and what have you, but they start at $900,000 a piece.
Thank you for that. Richard, do you have anything to share?
Well, there's a lot of possibilities, of course. I mean, one is an accessory dwelling an option, either in the home that you're in now or maybe in the home of your adult children? That's often a less expensive option than a lot of others. So that's one thing. The other thing, of course, is we're talking about needing to have housing that's more affordable. It's often unavoidable to have the community or maybe even the state government get involved in actually actively passing policies and raising funds to build more affordable housing. Mike also mentioned incentives that might be enacted by the local community, maybe in Nassau County, that might incentivize builders to build homes that are right-sized and missing middle housing perhaps and housing with more age-friendly features. So those are three areas. One of them might work for you, and one of them, there might be some options out there that you might need to explore. Mike, anything else?
I thought you covered it well, and I would just say I think this is what this kind of situation you've shared here is something we hear and see, unfortunately, across the country in a lot of places. The housing market, especially in recent years, has just been very constrained. Things are expensive, and I think what we're talking about here today is what we need to see more of being built. I think Richard's point around the accessory dwelling units as an option may be a really good one for you to pursue. I would also encourage you to kind of look at the livability index that I mentioned earlier, because that'll give you a sense of where your community is from a policy standpoint compared to others that are nearby that might be adjacent to you, where there could be other options or other places for you to look at. So that's the only thing I would add to Richard's really great answer.
All right, thank you. Julio, do we have another one?
Yep, our next question is Terry calling from California.
Hi, Terry, out there in California. What is your question for us?
I'm here.
Yes, what is your question?
Oh, my question is, how do you go about trying to get these counties and stuff You know, when I was a young guy, all the school vehicles and stuff and city cars were all used military units. And now all these cities and everything else, they go out and buy the brand new, the best kind of trucks, the biggest trucks, and it's ridiculous what they're spending of taxpayers' money, and they want more taxes, more taxes, more taxes. You know, it's crazy. When I moved in my house, my taxes were about $2,200, $2,300, and now they're going to be over $5,000 this year, and that's just.
All right. Richard?
Well, I don't know whether this will work in the callers community, but a lot of municipalities make arrangements for tax relief for older adults in particular circumstances. Not all communities adopt this strategy. Sometimes it requires legislative action on the state level, but for people who are really in dire straits financially and income-wise, this has been tried, has really been done all over the country. That might be one option for lessening that tax burden on you as an older adult with a fixed income.
Thank you for that. All right, Julio, do we have another question?
Yes, we have time for one more question, and it's Gloria calling from New York.
Hello, Gloria in New York. What is your question?
Well, I was wondering, I'm a senior that's aging in place, and as I get older, the things that I used to do with no problem are unsurmountable now. And I was wondering, is there some kind of way that we could include services for individuals who have to have their garbage cans put to the curb and their leaves blown from around their property, have their a path shoveled in front of their house. Those kinds of things, they're necessary when you're living on your own property. And when you get 82, it's a big job to try to do it. And you don't always have liable people to come and do it, or they say they're going to come and they don't come. So I was just wondering, has there been any question about giving some sort of special services for seniors who are aging in place who need these things in a city setting?
Thank you for your question. Richard?
Well, it's an interesting challenge that a lot of people face. I think we alluded to it earlier when we talked about, we're living as older adults in homes that may require additional maintenance, or maybe it's just the same maintenance, and we're less able to take care of that, and that might be one reason for folks to think about moving. Now, that might be an option for you, Gloria, but that certainly is one thing that propels people into other living situations. Condominiums or apartments or something where some of those things are taken care of. On a whole different tack, there is a kind of national network of individual households in particular communities called the village-to-village concept, I think, where people organize themselves to provide on a kind of a bulk basis services to each other and services that may be difficult for them to manage otherwise. I'm not sure if ARP has a line into that or not, but that's something that might have been organized in your community now you can take advantage of.
All right. Thank you so much for your questions. We will get back to your questions in a few minutes. Richard, let's an innovation for aging in place. You opened our discussion with an overview of the concept of aging in place. Can you refresh our memory on what aging in place means and then share what universal design is and how it relates to aging in place?
Sure, yeah. So at the outset, I mentioned successful aging, meaning being able to maintain your engagement with family and community life, being able to maintain your activities that have meaning and purpose. I'll try you out with another definition that really harkens back, Natalie, to what you were saying at the outset. So successful aging in place means the ability to live in one's home and community safely, independently, and comfortably, regardless of age, income, or ability level. So that definition refers both to the home and community issues that we're talking about here, and both safely, independently, and comfortably, right? Those are important. And it really talks about the diversity of people's needs that they're being met. So that's what we think successful aging is as another definition. So universal design is the concept applied to anything that we can design in the residential environment, the non-residential environment, products, and so on, that has higher function, yet is appealing to a wide audience. Those are two important concepts, higher function, and yet still appealing. It has to both look good and work well. In the context of housing, it means it has to work well better than traditional homes, and that's really part of the problem is that we're all aging, or a lot of us are aging, in homes that were designed entirely for a different demographic, and that's where the problem comes in. So the thing about universal design, these high-function features, is that they're built in, they're not added on. You need to have 4 key function areas in the house, which I'll talk about more later on the main level. But it's about providing greater ease of use and convenience every day, for everybody. That's why we think of universal design actually applying and being beneficial to a whole wide range of age groups, from young families to older adults and so on. But having features that are built in a way that they can really be useful at particular times during our life. So it's stuff that's in the background. We don't take notice of, we just use it. We appreciate the ease of use and convenience. But at certain points during our lives, if we have an accident, we have a health problem, if someone's visiting, these particular features can really come in big time and help us maintain ourselves in our home. So that's where universal design fits into, we think, the aging in place model.
Thank you. How is universal design different from traditional accessibility modifications, and can it be incorporated into both new construction and renovations?
Well, I'll start with the end. Yeah, it can be incorporated into new construction and renovations, of course, more easily, as everything can, into new construction. But it's entirely possible if you're doing a renovation project to have universal features included. Particularly, and this is one of the rubs and one of the challenges we have with all of our lives, is particularly if you plan ahead. If you can plan ahead and incorporate UD features in that kitchen renovation or that big bath renovation or the addition you're putting on, then it becomes much more easy to add those in, as you'll see, to customize it later. So for example, in an entry context, most of our homes have stairs coming into the home. A really well-designed universal home is going to have a step-free graded entry coming into the house. Contrast that with what we've done and many others have done for many, many years, is add ramps onto people's homes or even vertical platform lifts. Those are things that are customizations, right? They clearly don't have broad appeal, absolutely essential for many households and make a big difference, in the life of the individuals and the households members who are living there. But those are custom features that you have to add on. You'd prefer not to. And the idea with a universal home, you've got this step-free graded entry. You're never going to have to worry about adding a ramp or something at any point in time. It still is there. It's a value-added addition to the house. Looking in the bathroom, we think of tubs versus showers. A lot of us have bathrooms with tubs in them. People like their tub bathing. We know that long-term they can be really problematic and dangerous for people to be moving in and out of the tub. And while you can add accessories and features, you can add a tub bench, you can add grab bars around. Those are custom features. You can even add a handheld shower, which happens to be a universally designed feature. A shower that's a low threshold shower, by contrast, if you can take a shower, is something that's much more universally designed. Everybody can use it. No one is inconvenienced by it. And it just eliminates that step into the shower or the tub. So you're really reducing the likelihood of falls. And as I say, everybody can use it. And so we love that. Another example of an accessibility feature is someone who needs to maybe make knee space at the vanity in their bathroom. Maybe they're operating from a seated position now. They have to carve out some space or redo the vanity to sit in there. That's a terrific custom feature, but one that wouldn't be necessarily included at the front end in a universal house. That would be a thing you could customize later on. And that's the other characteristic of universal design, is that once you've got a universally designed home, all the customizations, some of which I've just mentioned, there's lots of others, are much more easily achieved at far lower cost, far lower hassle than you would have otherwise in a traditional home.
All right. This question is for both of you. Can you explain the intersection of universal design and AARP home fit principles?
I'll start. I think there's a big overlap. You know, if you look through the home fit guide, you can see a whole range of examples of age-friendly elements you might have in a home, from big stuff like step-free entrances to really small-scale things like added lighting, major things in bathroom, accessory features in bathrooms. There's a whole range of things. It's kind of a blended home if you look at it. It really is a home like a lot of us might wind up with later on in life. We start with a universal home. We add features and customizations over time. Some of these things are truly high function and broadly appealing. Some of them really are high function and may be useful only to us. So the home fit guide really has it all.
Yeah, and I think Richard explained it very well. So I wouldn't have much to add. The only thing I would add is essentially the AARP Home Fit Guide is a tool and a resource that we offer for free for anybody that basically helps you, as Richard said, understand what are the features in your home that you can think about or should think about, updating, upgrading, and then gives you tips and tools for how to take action and actually do that. So if you do want to access the guide, that's available on AARP's website. You can go to aarp.org/homefit. That's all one word. Again, aarp.org/homefit. There you can download a version of the guide. You can order a free version of it as well, and we'll print it and ship it to you. So there's a range of options available there. But again, as Richard said, the Home Fit Guide is really a tool and a way for you to begin to kind of address some of these universal design principles within your home and allow you to age in place.
All right. How can simple tech like smart night lights or voice activated switches help older adults age in place? Richard?
Sure. Well, you've opened the door to a huge area now, Natalie, because home technology has just exploded in the past 10 or 15 years. It keeps seeming like it's accelerating all the time, and it's frankly hard to keep up. So you can really go at the top end. You can get very sophisticated integrated systems for your home that will control all kinds of things. Some of them you can start with on the basis of the off-the-shelf voice-controlled products that people may be familiar with out there. But there are, of course, still a whole range of really simple lower tech items that can work as well. So you have, for example, night lights is a big deal for us. I mean, it's one of the things we recommend for everybody in whatever kind of home that they're living in now, whether it's more accommodating at night. Older adults need night lights, and there's a whole range of them out there. I'm the guy who gets up in the middle of the night in my household, much to my wife's chagrin. So she complains that I have night lights everywhere and they light up too many things. So regardless, I've got one by my bedside, I've got one in the hallway, one in the bathroom. So I feel like I'm getting my bases covered. I'm going to add some more, much to her chagrin. We will see what happens. In any event, you can get simple ones. Some of them are plug-in. Some of them can be battery operated. And the smart ones are kind of Wi-Fi controlled as well. So you can alter the colors. You can turn them off and off or moderate their light intensity. And again, they can be plugged in as well using a really low amount of light. Those can be very inexpensive, just a few dollars, $10 or so up to like $25 for half a dozen night lights that are the more less sophisticated variety. Let's talk about that as well. Other things I think that's interesting in the technology area is the fact that what was once high tech is now not such high tech. So I mentioned the voice activated devices that are that you can get for around your home. These days we've got 5 of them in my house. We can control things from various places where we're at, and they can control a whole variety of things. Again, depending upon how much you want to invest. but starting at surprisingly low prices. So, for example, something that might be voice controlled, you want to have control a light switch in some other part of the house, those can be as inexpensive as $16. That's not too bad, given the fact that it's not that different from what you might pay for with a regular light switch. You can also get less sophisticated versions of all these things that aren't Wi-Fi connected, that have remote control for a variety of usually lamps. You can get a remote controller for your hand. You can get these plugins that go into your wall socket. You plug the lamp into that. You get many, 5 or 6 of these for just a few dollars. $16 is one price that I was looking at recently. So those are the kind of devices where you don't need Wi-Fi for it. You do have to have a hand controller, but that plus a lot of other products are available out there these days in the home technology area, all the way up to, let's consider also that AI will at some point be playing a role, I think, in our lives at the high end of this initially, but certainly working our way down to help us out. But there's a range of technology solutions from really inexpensive, low-tech things up to the really much, much more expensive, almost robotic devices these days.
All right. Thank you for that, Richard. As a reminder, you're listening to live AARP Teletown Hall, where we're discussing where you live, your home, your community, and what you can do to stay in your home and community safely, affordably, and comfortably as you age. In a moment, we'll take questions from the audience. If you would like to have your question answered by our experts, press *3 on your phone. Now, Richard, for renters, what realistic steps can they take to make an apartment safer and more livable? And how can they work with their landlord to achieve this goal?
Yeah, renters are really in a particular situation, aren't they, with respect to their housing situations and what they can do to make the house more accommodating. A lot of the focus has been put on people who own their own homes, whether it's single family even, or even condominium style or townhome style. But renters are in a very particular situation. They don't own the home. Their freedom to modify the home is really quite limited. And what's true is that the Fair Housing Amendments Act of 1988 does give tenants rights with respect to their landlord regarding functional improvements they might want to have in their dwelling, which means whether it's adding grab bars, whether it's modifying a counter height, maybe that there's a door handle that's difficult to use and maybe you want to have a lever handle put on it, or a variety of other things. Maybe there's difficulty getting out of the dwelling. Those are all things you can talk to the law gives you the right to talk to your landlord about and to negotiate whether you're able to do these things or not. And then who pays? The landlord's under no obligation to pay for these things. And frankly, there's a couple of constraints you need to know about. The landlord is within his rights to require that the adaptation you put in there gets removed later on. And you might be the one who has to wind up paying for this as well. So those are constraints on what attempts you might make. You have to figure out how much is it worth to you to live in a dwelling that has some better features, and what are you willing to invest of your own money, how long are you going to be staying there. Again, the negotiation is built into the law. The outcome is not guaranteed, but you can build a case for this. And frankly, for an individual to go up against a landlord, it might be wise to have some outside help. We recommend to people that they reach out to what might be their legal aid groups in their communities to ask them if they've handled similar cases. They might be able to help represent your interests best from a renter's perspective. So we advise going on that route. There are things that can happen. You may have to do a little work to get them to happen, though.
All right. Thank you so much, Richard. Let's take a moment to talk about how AARP is fighting for you. Joining us is volunteer Linda Bowden, former AARP Vermont State President and a strong voice for livable communities. Welcome.
Thank you, Natalie. Glad to be here on this snowy day in Vermont.
Today, we're talking about aging in place. Housing plays a big role in that. What is AARP doing?
We're pushing for more housing choices that work for people of all ages. That means making it easier to build homes that are accessible and affordable, and helping folks make home updates so they can stay put longer.
What else is AARP fighting for to make cities and towns more livable?
Well, we also need safe streets, better transportation options, and great public spaces. We advocate for these every day. And through our Community Challenge grants, AARP has funded 2,100 local projects and invested $24 million to help communities become more age friendly.
That's wonderful. Many of our listeners are caregivers. What's AARP doing to support them?
Well, we're working hard to ease the load. Nationally, we're pushing for tax credits to help cover care costs. And in the states, we're helping pass laws for paid leave, more affordable respite care, and better support for nursing home residents. These changes really help families.
Medicare is another big issue for older adults.
Oh, it sure is. AARP is fighting to keep Medicare strong and affordable. Starting in 2026, Medicare can negotiate lower prices for 10 major drugs, and there will be a $2,100 cap on out-of-pocket drug costs. These are things we fought for and will keep fighting for. Also, a reminder, Medicare open enrollment closes December 7th. Now's the time to renew and review your coverage. If you're online, you can reach and search AARP Medicare open enrollment for free tips.
Thanks for that reminder. Can you hear me? Before we close, are there any final thoughts?
Yeah, with the next year being an election year, I want to let everyone know that AARP will keep fighting for what matters: housing, caregiving, Medicare, Social Security, and lowering costs. We'll make sure your voice is heard, and you're always encouraged to join the fight.
How can people get involved?
Speak up. Call or email your lawmakers and let them know these issues matter. You can also become a volunteer. It's one of the most rewarding things that I do. And finally, stay informed. Sign up for AARP's free advocacy newsletter at aarp.org/getinvolved.
That's aarp.org/getinvolved. Linda, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a special opportunity to be with you today.
All right. As a reminder, you're listening to a live AARP tele-town hall where we are discussing where you live, your home, your community, and what you can do to stay in your home and community safely, affordably, and comfortably as you age. We are joined today by our issue experts, Richard Duncan, Executive Director of the R.L. Mace Universe Design Institute, and Mike Watson, the Director of Livable Communities here at AARP. A quick reminder, this program is for educational insights, for personal guidance. Consult local permitting offices, licensed contractors, occupational therapists, or housing counselors. Let's take more of your questions. If you would like to have your question answered by our experts, press *3 now to be connected. Julio, who do we have on the line?
Yes, Natalie. Our next question comes from Facebook, and Winsome asks, how can I figure out if 50-plus communities are being planned near where I live?
Thank you for that question out there in Facebook. Mike?
Yeah, that's a great question. And as I mentioned earlier, I think the people want options. And some people are going to want to stay in their homes. Some people are going to want to stay in their neighborhood and maybe live somewhere else. And some people, like Winsome, might be curious or want to live in a 50-plus community or a 55-plus community. They're kind of around in neighborhoods across the country. So the best way, I would think, to actually find out about which ones are currently in your area or are under development would be to first check with your area agency on aging. You can find that by just doing a quick Google, or you can there's some phone numbers you can call that are available online. So you can check in with your area agency on aging. to see if they kind of just by word of mouth might know where they are in your community or if there's underdevelopment. The other area where I would suggest you check is with your city or county planning and zoning department. They're the ones that are going to track and approve new housing developments, which would include any 50 plus or active adult communities. Other websites like realtor.com might have examples as well. So that's kind of where I would reference. But again, we want to make sure people have a range of options, can stay within their homes or look elsewhere. And then finally, I mentioned kind of getting in touch with your area agency on aging. If you don't know where that is or you can't find it on Google, you can actually, there's a number called, it's the Elder Care Locator, and you can actually call a phone number. So I'm going to say that real quick. So if you're ready to write it down, it's 1-800-677-1116. Again, that's 1-800-677-1116. And that'll help you find and get in contact with your local area agency on aging.
Thank you for that. Julio, who else do we have?
Yes. Yep. Our next caller is Ezo calling from Texas.
Hello out there in Texas. What is your question out there in Texas?
Does ULIS have any housing, small houses for the senior citizens? No, I have a big house and I'm looking to go downsize.
Thank you for that question. Richard?
Well, if I understood it correctly, she's wondering about are there smaller homes that might be available in her community, perhaps? If I've got that right, that would be a great thing if they were. And unfortunately, there may be a little bit of pick and shovel work, if I may say, that Mike was alluding to in terms of what you may need to be doing to find out what's being built, what might be available. The realtor community is certainly one. They might know about homes and housing that's available that's smaller sized. The zoning and planning folks in your jurisdiction, whether it's the city, town, or a county, would be the folks who would be knowing if they had approved some plans for smaller homes. And again, I think the same kind of sources come up again, as Mike was mentioning, either the local council on aging or the area agency on aging might have a line into communities that had smaller homes. I mean, some of them might be condominiums, frankly, and it may be that the apartment complexes around might be the right size home for you. So good luck with your search, and I'm sorry I couldn't be more helpful to your specific locale.
All right, I think we might have time for one more question. Julio, who else is out there?
Yes, our next caller is Jack from Iowa.
Hello out there, Jack. What is your question?
Yes, my question is, I understand that you cannot get FHA funding for a house without a bathtub. Now, does that mean if I put in a jacuzzi like shower and lose the bathtub, that my house is no longer eligible to be sold with FHA funding?
That is an excellent question. Richard?
That's a great question. That gets into some details of FHA funding that I am not familiar with. If I understood what you said, that if you've built it with FHA funds and want to resell it and make the seller eligible for FHA funds, the home has to have certain elements present in it, including, as I understood it, I think, a tub. And if that's the case, then I'm not sure there's wiggle room around that. Obviously, if you've got 2 bathrooms in the home, we always recommend anyway that one have a shower and one have a tub to kind of accommodate folks. So I shouldn't think that would take the presumed buyer out of the running for this. But I'll confess, as I'm not an expert in the FHA world, those are just some general thoughts to maybe pursue to make sure that you might still be eligible if you've got both the shower and the tub.
I would just chime in here too. I think similar to some of the resources we offered earlier, this is a question I would actually recommend reaching out to your area agency on aging. Some of the folks there may not be experts in FHA funding, but they work closely with a lot of organizations that are doing those type of upgrades locally and could probably connect you with some resources or an answer. So again, I would try to check in with your area agency on aging. You can find that by Googling online and try to get in touch with them.
All right. I believe we do have time for one more question. Julio, anybody else out there?
Yes, we do. That's correct. Yep. Our question is coming from Facebook, and the president asks, what about people who have dementia? What are some things they can do to stay in their homes?
That is an excellent question out there, Rosalind, for Facebook. Richard?
Well, dementia takes a bunch of different looks, and so everyone's trajectory is different. One reality I think that's pretty common is that eventually you've got some physical impairment that's accompanied the cognitive decline. And so all the things we've talked about so far, with falls prevention, with the features around the home, would serve a person with dementia in their household very well and in good stead. The other component to that might be, again, depending upon this person's circumstances, that technology can and is playing a very significant role in maintaining folks with dementia in their community residence situations in a variety of ways, with reminders, with safety alerts and so on, with stove shutoffs to prevent someone from causing a fire if that's happening, and also kind of wandering prevention. So all those are available, I think, in the home technology area, and I think that a search of the web would produce a lot of options, and probably organizations in your community that might specialize in that. It's becoming more of a thing that businesses are taking up, providing this home technology to maintain people in their home situations.
All right. Thank you. Mike, anything to add on?
Yeah, I think Richard covered it well. I was going to kind of echo in the assisted technology. I think there's a lot of activity out there. Just some internet research, I think, could help kind of get a sense of the different options. And just underscoring Richard's point, I think in every community, there are local organizations and resources that are answering these questions daily and have a read on what are the resources that are available in your community. So a great place to start, I would, again, call your area agency on aging. You can find them online and get in touch with them. They, again, may not have the specific resource, but they may help you be able to find the way to that resource. Another good place to look, in particular with regards to dementia, is connecting with your Alzheimer's Association. They have a community resource finder that kind of has a list of dementia programs, support groups, and other services. So check in with your area agency on aging, and also do some searching to find out if your state or your community or your region has a local Alzheimer's Association chapter, because they also might be able to provide some more specific resources for you there.
All right. This has been a terrific conversation on the trends and challenges shaping where we live. If you would like more information on AARP's livable community efforts, you can visit www.aarp.org/livable. Thank you to our experts, Richard Duncan and Mike Watson, for sharing your insights today. And thank you to our listeners for joining us. This concludes our call.